Welcome viewers of Dateline Gujarat. We have with us today one of the personalities from Rajkot who has traveled across several areas in areas of innovation. She herself today is one of the innovation strategists, a kind of profession which would probably emerge in coming days in India with the way innovation and the way digital marketing strategies are framing up. She's somebody who has done a schooling in Rajkot at SN Kansagra. She went to CEPT. She studied the designs over there. She cleared NID and IIT entrance and she opted out for IIT Mumbai. And she's been one of the speakers at the 3 TEDx events in Bangalore, Kharagpur and Mumbai. She is the person who tried to address the pain of the diabetic patients by giving a system wherein a blood sugar level could be measured and a micro dosage of insulin, wherein a patient has not to take an injection but a micro dosage of an insulin through a micro needle gets inserted into the body, like the way mosquito pricks and a person suffers from the malaria or kind of diseases. That's how she got inspired from nature, from a mosquito bite, to find a solution for the human pain. Dateline Gujarat is today opportune to host this DLG influencers, innovators, entrepreneurs series. We kick off this series with Devina Kothari. Devina, welcome to Dateline Gujarat. It has been an honor and a pleasure to understand and study the kind of things which you have done. So tell us something, how this quest for innovation, that innovation wherein it makes an impact on the human life in a larger extent, because your innovations are mainly in areas of design which could make an impact in the pharmaceutical sector, healthcare sector. So how this inspired you that you should go for this particular area? Why not, let's say, a profession like, teaching or something like, let's say, academics, or going into financial sector, because you come from a community which is more into business. You're a Gujarati, of course. So why not that, and why something innovation? Because most of the times the belief for innovation is that the West is the innovator and the East are the consumers. So all your innovations, your Apples, your iPads, your iPods, everything happens in West, in Europe or US, and the East, that is your China, your India, these are the consumer markets. So somebody who is very different, coming with innovation in the healthcare areas, how this quest, what triggered that you should go for this sort of a profession?
This is a very interesting insight from you. Shall I hold this?
No, it's okay. You just have a look at the camera. Okay.
This is a very interesting insight, and you rightly put forth that most of the innovations are happening in the West, and the ones that you rightly mentioned, that all the Apples and Googles are from the West, which are coming to India. But if you see on the other side, 1/6 of the world's population is in India. And if we have to design something for Indians, then why not an Indian doing it for Indians? So that was one side. But how the whole quest for innovation started was that I come from a little privileged society. So I don't have to worry about whether I'll have food tomorrow or whether I'll be able to afford education or not. My parents took care of everything before I was born, probably. So there was no such quote unquote struggle for survival. But there was a struggle for making a meaning out of a life. How do you leave a legacy behind? And that happens when you impact a few million people or a few billion people. So then I thought that what is it that a billion people want in today's day and age? And that's where I felt that, if we could make somebody's life more easier, or if we extend their life by even a few minutes or days or months or years, or if you could do something where they can lead a healthier lifestyle, then probably that is something that I would want to work on.
Okay. This brings to an interesting area that you want to make an impact on the million lives. And when I study your website and I study your links and the kind of work which you've done, it is making an impact. I mean, the designs which you have produced, the industrial designs which you have produced, you first of all opted for a profession into industrial designing. So what was it that you selected this particular niche, that you want to go for an industrial designing, and how do you see that the industrial design could make an impact on billions of people, just not in India, worldwide.
So initially, what I felt was that I wanted to do product design because that's very fashionable and that is something that everybody knows about. So even I had that in my mind. But then when I ventured a little deeper into it, I realized that product design usually surfaces around aesthetics. So if something looks beautiful, it need not always mean that it's more useful or it's more functional or it will really solve a problem. But industrial design is about solving a problem, and that is what fascinated me. Versus when we talk about other aspects of education in current day and age, which is fintech and which is a lot of other things that are marketing, advertising, but everything at some point, if we address it towards solving a problem, that is also innovation. So even right now, while we are talking, I'm getting ideas that how can we do something on the fintech side for the bottom of the pyramid? Because if we make our 80% of the population say 1 rupee a day, then it's going to be a boom for our economy.
Precisely. So, instead of going into a niche designing, you prefer to go on an industrial designing. And industrial designing also, when I study your website, it's more in the areas of healthcare, like the delivery of insulin which you develop for diabetic patients, the kind of kit which you develop for the ophthalmic transplants, and of course your product, that's the store which uses the heat energy to be stored as an electric energy and then get it converted to an electric energy and light up the lives in the villages. Of course, when the government is talking of the last mile connectivity, the last village already electrified. So what was that passion which was driving you? A diabetic patient, a solution for a diabetic patient, a solution for the people who donate their eyes, something for our villagers who are living out of a kind of scarcity of electricity. Even you, which is not there, of course, on your website, but you mentioned off the record about the kind of kit which you develop for the people who could address the issue of diarrhea, at least in villages and rural belt. So, how does these ideas, when you're talking industrial design, making impact on billions, and you say constantly the ideas flow, like the way you said, even if we are able to save 1 rupee, you're making an impact on economy, a fintech idea. So, how do these ideas, wherein you have been focused more or less on the human side, the healthcare. So how did these ideas come one by one? Could you explain that?
So there was no such structured thought that I had that I always wanted to go in healthcare. It happened very organically, that I started with something which led to something else and so on and so forth. So initially in my P3, which is project 3 at IDCIT Bombay, that's our thesis project. So that's the biggest thing for any student there. So I thought I wanted to definitely do something in the healthcare side so that the impact is higher, the impact is of a larger scale. That's how my first foot into healthcare started. But then the more I ventured into it, I realized that this is one area that actually needs a lot of design thinking. And when I talk about design thinking, it's about mining out the opportunities and insights from the consumer which are unmet.
Okay.
And which if we can address, even if it's not a problem, if it's a glitch or something, and if we could do it in a little better way so that they can be more usable or more consumer friendly, then I think the impact will be higher, is what I felt. Then what also I felt was that while I was doing research for one particular project, I used to stumble upon various other problems around it. So I thought I should work on that also. Then maybe somewhere solutions that work in one area can work in another area with minor tweaks. So I thought, why not try and implement it here? So that's how organically one thing led to the other. But there was no like a great plan around working on healthcare. It just happened. It just, when you see people suffering out of preventable situations or measures, then it really pinches your heart. That, nobody should be dying of diarrhea. Nobody should be dying of polio. All these are preventable ones. Okay. If there is a natural catastrophe or some disaster, it is beyond our control. But this is in our control.
Very true.
So.
But how did this idea, of a delivery system, because I think this is something which is a real innovation, that a diabetic patient who has to inject himself or herself with the needles insulin into the stomach, and you design a micro system. So how did this idea come? Could you just I mean, you of course talked about this on your TED talks, but let us take one by one your innovations and a simple granulated form as to how did these ideas come up to your mind that this is something what I should do. And you've always been talking that nature teaches us the best. So how did you get these ideas from the nature?
Well, this is a very nice story. It's a little painful, but it's very interesting. So, one of my Ada, which is a Gujarati name for your father's elder brother, he suddenly fell ill, and and somehow we realized that the reason that his health deteriorated had a root cause in diabetes. Now, at that time, he was still being taken care of in a hospital. So I thought, let me, like, if I'm from IIT Bombay, the least I could do is just design something quickly so that something can help him. So just few electronics here and there, just put together, and let's make something. So that's how it started. That within 2-3 weeks, I wanted to make something. But then I realized, no, it's not a 2-3 week job. It is very complex, and I realized there are a lot of things that go in that the quote unquote diabetes ecosystem, that people have to constantly monitor it. You have to constantly administer insulin in case if there is a fluctuation, which could be for any reason. It could be because of a diet, it could be because of stress, it could be exercising, anything. It could be because of comorbidity also, it could be some side effect. Then a little glitch happens in the health, and which somebody around you should also know about it.
True.
And there's so many things that I started unfolding in that journey. Sadly, we lost my uncle, but then I thought, if this can happen to tier 2, tier 3 India, little well-to-do family, it can happen to anyone. And when it hits somebody from the bottom of the pyramid, or lower middle class, it's not going to affect one person, it will affect the entire family. Because the entire family sometimes is resting on one shoulder.
One person's income, yeah.
Now, in that case, I couldn't save somebody close to me, but if I can really make this possible, I will be able to save so many other people who are close to each other, who would otherwise, just fall apart. So that's how it just kept on going. And then one fine day, I could put the entire solution together, and that's how it happened. During that journey, there was one thing that I was really struggling with, was the pain part. Because when I see myself, like, even if I have to go and take a blood test done, it is painful. I mean, if you put up a fake
Any little prick is
face,
painful, obviously.
any prick is painful. And as you grow older, you don't show it on your face, but it hurts.
It hurts.
And now, if every day, before every meal, or somehow if somebody has to keep on doing it to themselves, it is not that they are strong, they have adapted to that reality. It's their new normal phase. Can we prevent that? So that was one, and I was not getting any solutions around it. Then one of my elder nephews, we were just having some conversation, walking here and there, and he was a young kid at that time. So he saw a mosquito, and he was so fascinated that, oh, there's a mosquito here. And then I felt that, okay, the mosquito is there, I didn't feel it. What if it pricks me? Will I feel it? No. Nobody ever in the history till today has ever felt a mosquito prick.
Even the dinosaurs died because of that.
Yeah. So, which means it's painless,
True.
right? So, but at the same time, we get malaria through the same mosquito. Now, there was something which just sparked, and I felt that this is where an inspiration is resting. This is gold mine. So now I studied, how the mosquito probe is, and how does the fluid from one place to another is transferred, and can we somehow use that to transfer insulin? And that's how the journey began. Yeah.
So that's how this innovative, revolutionary product for diabetic treatment, it has been now. And what is at which stage this is? I mean, has these been commercialized, or still some R&D is going with the companies which you have tried to talk with, and the way they have taken this design ahead?
So it has not yet been in the market, but I'm hopeful that it will soon be in the market. It is lying with a French MNC right now, and I'm looking forward that someday this will hit the market. Yeah.
Your another product has been Ophthalmic kit, wherein you have designed a kit wherein what I understood when we were talking offline is that it was something like uh, assault rifle called Uzi was just little bit changes were made and it was made to AK-47. The similar manner, what I understand is that you have this ophthalmic kit idea also, where people donate their eyes. I think you have made some very changes which are traditional and were root cause for the kind of failure which we have seen in ophthalmic transplants. So what was that idea? How that idea triggered, and how did you really try to address that?
So most of the times what happens is that once if something is working well, we consider that it will always work well. Now generations pass by, times pass by, technology is taking a leap every few years, but we don't go back and keep on modifying the system which had worked well to make it more relevant to the audience. Nowadays people are doing it. Say for example Google, in spite of it being Google, it will still push you updates. Every few days you will have some or the update. Every few days you will have some or the other glitches that they are resolving for you which you didn't even know of, right? But they are still doing so that they never become irrelevant for their audience. The moment irrelevance happens, a shift happens. Now that is one reality today, only in the technology side. If we look at the main product side, only the products which are making money are the ones which are getting updated. For example, the automotive sector or consumer goods like cell phones or fridge, microwave, etc. But we are not doing this for healthcare. When was the last time you saw a different design of a syringe or a needle? Very rare. I don't recall, maybe one or two here somewhere which is done as some project but is not in the mainstream
That
market.
is the reason I said the innovation is West, the East is just a consumer. So we have those plastic syringes, that's fine, but there is no innovation in that.
Absolutely. On the other hand, now if we look at, I mean, these are problems that I would love to work on, and someday, hopefully, I will come up with some solution. But what I felt was that when I was studying the enucleation, it all started with the IIT Bombay thesis project, and I really wanted to make an impact. And I wanted to start with something with the five senses, one of the five senses. Because in 4 months, if you have to complete a project, I wanted it to be a realistic one where I can learn also and I can make an impact. So, and since my power was really high at that time, I knew without specs, my life is miserable. So, if somebody who doesn't have sight, what would life be for them? Like for me as a designer, if you ask me what is red, I'll give you 10 adjectives of it, that this is color red to me. How will you explain color red to a person who can't see? So now your entire knowledge of culture will also come into picture. If you are from a particular culture, probably you'll see its danger. If you are in some other, maybe you'll say delight or spring or love or danger, auspicious, inauspicious. China and India, we have two different versions of red, right? So then there is no, what do you call it's it's very different. I mean, now you see life in a very different way. So I thought the least I could do is if at least one eye is given to a blind person, their life will change. Okay. But why are we not able to do those corneal transplant wherever it's possible? I mean, there are so many cases where it's not possible if the optic nerve has dried or something. That's beyond our control. But I thought that okay, if I can find out that where there is a glitch in the entire system, where the deaths are happening, people are donating corneas, but effective transplantations are not happening. In that journey, I realized that the glitch is at the instrument panel. The kit, the enucleation kit, which at that time was quite dated according to me, and because of which we're not able to really do the transplantation. Yeah. Do I answer your question?
I think you have largely answered this. So it's kind of the kit which was used in a traditional manner. You have gone for a modification of that kit, putting some basic things which were available in market, which were missing. So again, it's like converting an Uzi to an AK-47, and you did it rightly. Now comes the question is on the stove which you said the work is under progress, and you say that the electrical energy which could be used for cooking using ethanol into the ruler belts and converting the heat into a kind of a stored energy, and that could be used to light up your lamps basically in the rural villages. So how did this idea trigger? And how do you see this? I mean, what's the timeline you're looking for this to really get replicated into the rural life?
So this also started when I was doing some research for the enucleation kit, because during the research I realized when I was talking to a lot of surgeons also, they said so many times you can split the cornea into two if it's a very healthy cornea. And I mean, not that it is always found in rural areas, but a lot of rural areas has very healthy corneas also. So in that I was just doing some research where I figured out there are poor people in a particular belt across the globe, which is near the equator, and which is also built for sugarcane. Now, when there is sugarcane, definitely there are going to be sugar mills around it for obvious reasons. And one of the byproducts there is ethanol. So I thought, okay, poor people, lack of resources, lack of electricity, and ethanol. These are the realities. Can we connect the dots? So if ethanol is a byproduct, it's almost at a negligible cost. How can we convert that ethanol into consumable fuel? Now pressure comes into picture, storage comes into picture, etc., and so on and so forth. So in that areas, what are the common products which are available which can help into pressurizing? So there's a foot pedal vagera which we use in filling air in our bicycles, etc., which can be used, etc. So I figured out a particular system which at a low cost can be put into place for the fuel part. Next was that if so poverty is also closely related to healthcare, at some dilapidated healthcare. One of the reasons is poor hygiene and poor access to clean water and food. But then you can always boil food and you can cook food, which will make it lesser harmful to your body. But how do you encourage that? Fuel again is not going to be available. So somewhere I felt that there is a link everywhere. So with ethanol, you can provide them fuel which is at a lesser cost. Secondly, most of these poor household have a niche around which they put their stuff and they cook. So all the soot, if they're using kerosene, it dissipates a lot of small particles of soot carbon which get inhaled and the lungs get damaged. So ethanol is something which miraculously doesn't have these side effects, bad effects, sorry. So I thought it's a win-win condition. Now let's try and make this work. So once you encourage people to start cooking, they're going to produce lot of heat. And in smaller houses, what are they going to do of that heat? At the same time, can we convert heat into electrical energy? Yes, we can. And for hundreds of years, the Seebeck effect is there, and we all know about it. Then the challenge was, and now still I'm facing that, is the electronics around it. A lot of heat also means the electronics have to be secure, that they will not catch fire and stuff. They should not melt. There are a lot of other things that, if there is a vandalism or something spills over it, etc., what will happen to the batteries which are storing the electrical energy, which is from the heat energy. So it's a win-win thing. So more you boil your water, healthier you will be. More you eat cooked food, healthier you will be. And the more you cook, you have more energy. So even if for cottage industries, if we increase 2 hours of electricity for them, so their day is not then 8 hours or 10 hours, it's 12 hours or plus 2. So they can earn more, or they can, invest time into education, they can go to night schools, whatnot.
So this revolutionized the entire way the people are living, the way people are adhering to the basic hygiene culture, and of course they get a fresh food and they get electricity also. Your fourth product you talked was how to prevent, a disease like diarrhea, and how to educate the masses. So how did this inspire you, and what was that trigger moment, wherein you thought this is necessary?
So this actually started when I was not started, but probably it came to my mind at that time when I was working with ASHA workers for Project Jaya, which is based on my dadi's name, and which actually involves around using technology to ensure that pregnant ladies and infants under the age of 5 get immunized. In that, when I was talking to ASHA workers, I understood that ASHA workers have 44 programs under their umbrella, and what these 44 programs were, etc. One of them was about malaria and diarrhea, etc., where they have to provide freezing tablets, and they have another set of things that they do. I figured out, but a lot of things can happen, in a different way. Because whenever they have a case of diarrhea, they panic a lot because everybody's heard of children dying of diarrhea. So every mother, the first thing that they do is take them to the primary healthcare center, and they wait in queues until the turn comes. They are very anxious and they are very worried that they might lose their child to diarrhea. And then asha workers are also there who help them with zinc tablets, etc. That is after they have diagnosed that it is only diarrhea, and zinc and ors will help them. But before that, it's still a panic moment. Also, when more and more women and children come to primary healthcare center for diarrhea, there are, because it's first come first serve and so on and so forth, a lot of people with, say, jaundice or tuberculosis or other illnesses which actually require a lot of medical attention, their time to service gets extended. So that's where I felt that, if we could create a more Lego like system for things like diarrheal diseases, probably it'll help. Now, definitely, when something happens in such a Lego like format, not every time it's going to, be helpful. But what I feel is that initially, first line of action, if ors and zinc, etc., does not work, then go to the doctor. Then the load on the primary healthcare center gets reduced. So the doctors are then treating more serious problems rather than fever and diarrhea, etc. So that's where I felt that one needs to really work on this area also.
But how did you, define that uniformity of the content which needs to be taken for the dosage? Could you just throw a little light on that? How do you innovate that particular product? Because while we were talking offline, you said about, the measures could be different for a water, for the spoon, or kind of things. So how did you really, when you say of building a Lego-like system, how did you really redefine and redesign that entire kit, wherein you say that, okay, this can be useful to prevent diarrhea kind of diseases?
Sure. What I realized was that government is giving these tablets for free, ORS powder is for free. Then why are still children dying because of this? So I couldn't understand what is the logical reason. So I started going to these places and seeing what is happening there. And I also talked to a lot of ladies there and ASHA workers, etc., to understand how this works. And that's where I saw this, that when they are telling me that एक glass pani, like one glass of water, but that glass is different in every household, so there is no standardization there. Every spoon, because they get spoon from wherever they are working, so every household will have a different spoon. Sometimes it's a tablespoon, sometimes it's a teaspoon, a soup spoon, different kinds of spoons. So again, when it is written that you need to put one spoon into one glass of water, that spoon is different, the container is different. Then when a child is younger, you need to feed them every few spoons, every few hours. Now, few spoons, the quantity is very less. So after, when it is not consumed, it is left in open and it is exposed to the external environment, which becomes a hotbed for other diseases to infest.
Very true.
And then that is fed to the child. So again, the child succumbs to it. So then I realized that, okay, there needs to be a system where every household will have same size of container, same size of spoon, same way of storing it. So that if that does not work, it becomes a benchmark for the doctor to understand the next line of action. So that way some standardization needs to be there. Then I realized that the best people who do standardization are the Japanese. So what do Japanese do? So and I realized that, if so cost is obviously one factor that I was looking into, because I have to put my own money to make this, then cost definitely is one factor. Second was the ease of manufacturing it, because again, if I am to manufacture, I can't invest into expensive dyes or something. And third is that if this needs to go pan India, it needs to be language agnostic also.
Yeah.
So then I thought origami is the best thing. So I took inspiration from origami and then converted every page. So then I thought a book is the best one to do this, and every page of a book converts into one thing that goes into the system. So one page gets converted into a pouch, another page gets converted into a spoon, third page will have one matchstick, so that that matchstick is used for lighting up the stove or some logs, etc., so you can heat the water and you could put a chlorine tablet inside so that the water is clean. You don't use normally available tap water and put an ORS solution because that is not clean. It will lead to another set of diseases, and so on and so forth. So that's how the book is envisioned to be.
That's how the product line was developed for that particular area. Interestingly, when I come across your this whole journey, what I understand is that you have been somebody who has tried to granulate the most complex structures, understanding the data science, calibrating the social areas, and understanding the patterns of how the way the government works, what are the areas which needs to be plugged at a consumer end or probably into the system. So now what I understand is that you have equally started a new venture, which is a kind of innovation strategist. So this is an enterprise into an enterprise of a kind of a model. And again, I understand this thing. This has been something in your trait of your thinking, that you try to solve one problem, you find another problem, and you try to address that problem also. So could you just explain, this how you travel through this journey of data sciences, social sciences, consumer behavioral patterns, and how you digitize it and how you take that on a platform like working as an innovation strategist?
Oh, that is so complex for me to answer. Maybe I'll request you to break that into a few more questions, that I'll get
Yeah. So
lost in the
so let us
journey.
understand that how did you think of triggering into area of innovation strategist?
So, very nice one actually. This is something I realized very later in my career path, that what is that one name that defines what I do. That happened because whatever I wanted to do was around social impact. And the impact with every project, I started feeling that no, I want more impact and so on and so forth. So now, if I want an impact of 1 billion people, then I really need to work on larger projects, which definitely means it's resource intensive. So I'm not backed by any foundation, or I'm not backed by VC funding or anything as such, which is going to pump money into my vision or my passion. And something that I am convinced of, if I can't support myself, why should somebody else? And that is what I feel is the truth. If tomorrow I have to invest into somebody else's venture, I'll first see how much he himself or she herself has invested into it.
True.
Because that will give me an idea whether they believe in what they do or not. And if they believe in what they do, then they are going to see it through till the last mile. So that's how I feel myself. And I thought, if this is how it should be, how can I support myself in doing this? So I figured out that there are a lot of things that I do, which is mining insights and opportunities from the consumer for a particular problem or a cause. Similarly, that needs to be done for brands, because these big MNCs also require these insights and opportunities to be mined so that they can make their products, functions, features more relevant to the audience.
Okay, so we come to this conclusion. What we understand is that you have formed an enterprise into an enterprise wherein you fund your passion of making social impact for the insights which you gain by sharing it with the companies, with the brands, and try to make them understand that this is what they need. But when I go through your website, I see that you have transformed a lot from just an innovator talking to FMCG brands, to the telecom or the DTH brands, or to the retail brands, or to the home enterprises. How do these insights really help you? I mean, how do these insights really help those customers or those clients? Those are the MNCs or national companies which are having the presence pan India. So what are those little changes you think these insights can bring, and bring a kind of a ecosystem for them, wherein they reduce their expense burdens and they can put something in an innovative side or contribute towards the research and development?
Very valid point. And actually, people don't think about this. Human is a human. Whether they use a mobile phone or a TV, the audience is the same. So if we identify what are their needs, it may be applicable in one way for a telecom industry, but the same thing is applicable in another way for something else. It could be for an automotive industry, it could be for consumer goods, it could be fashion, for anything. So that's where I felt that when somebody understands the target audience, then the insights can be interpreted in various ways for various brands. And that's how I see that everything comes together. So when I'm talking to the bottom of the pyramid right now for social impact products, the same conversation, the insights from the same conversations are also one of the points that I talk to when I'm at the Google Launchpad, where I'm helping people understand what is the NBU, which is the next billion users vertical. Because today now the users are saturated, like tier 2, tier 3 India, middle class, upper middle class and upwards, we all are Google or somewhere in the internet domain, right? But the next billion users are the ones which are right now probably not even hearing the conversation, what we are doing, probably don't even know something like this exists. How do we make something which is relevant to them, either to get them onto the platform or to make their lives better? So these again are the same conversations. It's just that different people are using it in a different way. So I'm probably one of those bridges for them. Yeah.
So, Devina, let us say this journey of an innovator to an innovation strategist, step two. What would be the step three if you're talking basically?
Ah, I haven't thought of it actually, but I would love to be somebody who is able to connect the disconnected, because that is where I see innovation happens. Like, and I feel that Indians by default have been innovators. Every mother is an innovator, is what I feel, because
It's basically the jugaad mindset of the people. They somehow manage their problems.
and at the same time, I would strongly, want to emphasize that jugaad is not bad, because most of the times, because of our linguistic freedom, we associate jugaad with not so good, quick fixes for a problem. But on the hindsight, I feel it's one of the best ways of doing it, because if something can happen as a quick fix, means there is another vertical for mass production there.
There's a long-term possibility of that quick fix.
Yes, definitely that quick fix needs a lot of refinement for it to reach a particular level. But then once that problem is solved, then it definitely has a potential to scale up.
We have a person over here who has just not fed her passion, but to fund her passion, she has gone onto a different role, and she clearly thinks that the step three is going to be something in that area again, where she can change the lives of the billions. India per se, the way India is becoming now the innovation hub, I think you are more headquartered at Delhi. So how do you see this ecosystem really panning? Because what I see that the startups are really, I mean, you are one inspiration for them, wherein you to fuel your own passion, you started to fund your own passion, and the way you took a next leap. So how do you see this startup system, wherein most of the startups, they say that that could be one idea, and most of the entrepreneurs or the corporates bet on that one idea. It's not that 100 ideas, but the 99 ideas die. So what would be the message, to this particular, because you see, even government has tried its best. What I understand, as compared to China or compared to India, India has done a lot in terms of startup funding and everything. But unfortunately, that's not gearing up the way it should. So where is the, where do you see that shoe is pinching, and what is the message to the new startups when you talk of this?
Very, very valid point. And I think you rightly said that, the way it started off, it doesn't have the same momentum right now. It is fizzling out. There are, what I personally feel, there are 2, 3 reasons for this. One is that somebody who started the startup, sometimes it happens because of the fear of missing out, or it's like another me too, that, everybody is doing it. Me too, I also want to do it. Or everybody is doing it. If I don't do it, I miss out the bus. So that's where, when it's not driven from passion, it will never succeed. It's not just for startup, for anything in life. If you do it,
Follow your passion. That's very important.
if there is a startup idea, go ahead. If it's not there, it's okay. You don't have to forcefully create a startup for funding and stuff. So that's where I see one problem, that, if it's not passion driven, it will fizzle away, because every, not just startup, but every company has a hiccup every day. Somebody will address it in one day, somebody will address it in a month, or it'll take years. But you have to keep on, you have to be determined, you have to stick to it, you don't have to give up. Trust me, I give up every day. And every evening I'll have a call with my parents saying that I have given up, I don't want to do this. I'll also cry every month, and I'll also feel disheartened, rejected, I don't want to live in this world, etc. conversations. And then I'll think of my parents and they'll motivate me, and the next day again I'm back to work. So everybody will have these situations. Some people don't get up once they fall, and some people get up every time they fall. So there's something that my mother told me, that you don't have to think about the finishing line, you just take one extra step. So that one extra step is going to ensure that you always keep progressing. So that is something that I believe in.
Success does not come overnight, it comes over the time. That's how it is, as small steps basically.
Absolutely. And I also feel that success is a very relative term. So, right now, on the other side of the mic, you probably feel I might be successful, but deep down in my heart, I know I'm not. Because I know how many failures I have faced, to reach wherever I am. And I also know that there are hajar failures I have to address tomorrow or right now. After probably our conversation, again, I'll be on the laptop and trying to address it and stuff. So I think that ways I would probably put success somewhere like happiness or something, that, if you're happy from your heart doing whatever you're doing now, then you're successful and you're a happy person.
Last few questions on when we talk of when you've reached a stage, where you have tried to address few things in such a manner that you may see that there are some hiccups somewhere. You have a proven, what do you call it, an innovative product model, but somehow it's not picking due to some or the other reasons. There could be, let's say, if you have something which is there, which is solving a problem of billion them, and that is creating a disruption. That's a new word today, into the ecosystem. For many who are established in ages and years, most of the times I see the multinationals, the way they have their business practices. So how do you see, address this particular roadblock when you are with a proven product, but somewhere it's not being addressed because there is a kind of most of the established players see it as a disruption.
Absolutely, very valid.
I'll tell you, the government, nobody thought 9 crore toilets. Okay, that's one of the biggest examples what we were discussing. 9 crore toilets have been a disruption for the people who have been into contract manufacturing, into pharma products, which are basically used to treat diarrhea and malaria, or vomiting and kind of things. So nobody thought that 9 crore toilets constructed by the government will be a disruptor. But if you see in a hindsight, it is somewhere addressing the healthcare issue, it's somewhere addressing the Clean India issue, but it is a disruptor. In the same way, the product which you make is somewhere addressing billions, it's trying to benefit billions, but is somewhere seen as a roadblock by the established players. So how do you as an entrepreneur address this particular roadblock?
There is an answer in the question itself.
Okay.
So when we were little younger kids and all, our parents used to tell us that don't fight with anyone. You figure out your way around it. Don't get into heated arguments and stuff. So why that? So sometimes when somebody is a little bigger giant than you, they'll always be in a position of power. Which means no matter whether you are right or no matter how good the product will be, they are still the wall. And you can never have your way across them. You'll always have to take another route. So if the pharma giants, the people who are doing these contractual job works for these particular medicines, if they knew that the toilets are going to hamper their product line, will they let that happen? No. They will figure out a way in which that doesn't happen. And I don't see that it is right or wrong or whatever. Maybe everybody's reality is different. Maybe for them, if it's their bread and butter and if it is supporting their child's education and life, maybe it's the only path for them. May not be right for us, probably, because we are looking at it from a third person's perspective. Same way, when I'm facing, so I faced it, I realized it in one of my projects, that whenever a giant is into a picture, either it has to be in line with what the giant wants it, then it's almost like you're riding on the bull, and it becomes very easy. On the other hand, if you're trying to do something which probably is antagonistic from what they think or their line of approach, it will be a barrier. But I learned it after I made the product. So then what I figured out was that, what if that product was brand agnostic or vertical agnostic? For example, if I create something which can be consumer centric, where the consumer is using it for his or her personal needs, then the brand or the giant is not into the picture. Which means make it so broad that everybody can use it for anything.
Okay.
Then again, these problems are addressed, because then you become a giant later on in 5-10 years, and then if you become a person of power, then you have a choice. Either you do what the others did to you and then give it back to the world, but maybe there is another way wherein whatever problems you faced it, ensure nobody else around you faces it, and ensure next time somebody is coming up with a product which is probably antagonistic from your line of thinking or product, but if it is good for the society, ensure it comes in the market at the fastest pace possible based on your backing.
I close this conversation now of your journey of innovation and your journey as an innovation strategist. I think it's more an inspiration to lots of people who are into the startup space. But I'm talking something now on the personal line. How many hours you work a day?
Oh my God. My mother is seeing this right now, so I'm not going to tell you the truth. But if she was not seeing it, there is not a single moment where your mind is switched off. Like, there is a very popular thought that you work only 8 hours and
Idea ignites you completely. That I understand. But when it comes to the physical work, maybe even a thinking or a conversation or whatever you call it. So what is that hours you put in really?
the moment I wake up to the moment I sleep, because somehow
Okay, so let me reverse the question. How many hours do you sleep?
I, it's very flexible. Like, I don't have a start or a stop to it, because sometimes you're working on something you can't sleep. You, I mean, I don't know. There's no answer to this actually.
An ideal sleep would be what like for you?
6 hours, I think, or 5 hours.
Because sleep deprivation is something, I think as an innovator, we should try to address this, how people sleep nicely. Okay. Okay. So this is one area, that how many hours you work. And my second question to you would be that, how do you, I mean, you travel a lot, you meet the people, so you're working on several projects. So how best you, I mean, I want the message to go to those innovators or the people who are working in a single person capacity. How best you manage your time?
Oh, this is where connecting the disconnected comes into picture very much, because when you're meeting a lot of people, you're working on multiple projects, you can start, addressing things in a cross-disciplinary manner, because something that works for telecom will also work for, say, automotive, or something that didn't work for automotive might work for telecom. But only people who are working in various verticals are the ones who have the joy and liberty to make these connections, and because of which actually you can work on more and more projects, because your pace at which you will come up with solutions will be much faster.
So how do you manage your time? My question is that, let's say if you're working 18 hours a day, 6 hours you're sleeping. So how do you manage your 18 hours? Like let's say meetings, if you're taking a rough pie if we're talking about a rough pie of Devina's time management, how would that be basically?
Very ill managed. Ask my parents, ask my father, he'll give you 10,000 ways in which I'm
Every innovation, every person who's an entrepreneur is very ill managed. That's what I can. I mean, the way we started our own venture, lots of people. I mean, the way they see us, they see that we are very much ill managed. But I mean, yeah, I understand that's a inborn trait when you're with your own things, because you're not going into a 9 to 5 job, or you have to be at 9 o'clock. You have to hit that punch, and you have to be over there, and 5 o'clock you're out. So ill management is a part of it. But how? I mean, even if ill management is a part of it, how do you manage your time?
So I'll give an example, probably that might answer your question. Like right now, when I'm in Delhi, there's a lot of time goes into traveling. So initially, I was just going around trying to understand the routes, etc. After you go to a particular place after 1 or 2 times, you know how the route is. At the back of your mind, you know you're going the right way. Then another about 30 minutes I invest into listening to podcasts. If it is a place where I can't read, if it's a mode of commute where I can read, I invest time into reading.
That's a Delhi metro most of the times.
Delhi metro, unfortunately, I can't use all the time, but I would love to do that. Most of the time, these are Uber journeys where you're stuck in traffic.
And you're stuck in traffic in Delhi, of course, yeah. Well, so that's how you manage your time listening to the podcast and trying to understand what's happening around.
I feel that I think more than managing time, it is more of optimizing time.
Okay.
So sometimes even when you're meeting people, there's a lot to learn from them. So like our conversation itself, I mean, I learned so much that I had no clue of about. So after you go, I'm going to research on that. That what really happened, because every innovation does not happen in isolation. It has its roots into what's happening in the world at that particular time, what is triggering certain behaviors in the consumer, and I'm sure there's something that I can mine from here which can be used somewhere else. So that this is optimization of time, that all the conversations are at some point connected with each other. And even say like while I'm ironing my clothes, I'm still listening to YouTube, and I'm catching up on news on what's happening in different parts of the world, etc.
So you're that millennial generation which uses the Uber and Ola, like the way Nirmala Sitaraman said that because of that people are not buying cars. So we keep that aside. So let me understand you as an entrepreneur. Let this go as a message. How are your food habits? Because you sleep, you said you're very ill managed, but how are your food habits?
Oh, very bad. I'm ashamed about it because I'm not very good
And
at.
Delhi is very bad about food when it comes to Gujarati food. Let me tell you, I was stayed for 6 months and it was a horrific experience for me.
So, because for me, Gujarat is home, right? So, food means ghar ka khana. Food is something that's like it's more like legacy and family and all that. So, if you give me Gujarati food outside Gujarat, if it doesn't taste like Gujarati,
Now, how about a dhokla with a paneer? That was my experience in Delhi. So,
yes, welcome to Delhi. But on the other side, what I really enjoyed is trying different kinds of cuisines. Somewhere I realized that, cuisines have a lot to do with culture, obviously, and the influences of invasions which have happened. Like for our culture, like where did paneer come into picture? Because we are I'm scared to use this word, but if this is not a religious oriented conversation, and if we are Indus Valley civilization descendants, so technically we are Hindus, but not with respect to religion, but with respect to the geographical location, right? Where if we consider that our gods are somebody where you offer milk as prasad, as an offering. So if milk gets spoiled, it's not a good omen. It's a bad omen. But to make paneer,
out of a
you need to you need to spoil the milk to make paneer.
so that's also innovation, I would say.
But yeah, and it's very interesting that now modak and lot of other prasads have paneer as a part of it. So then I felt that how did this happen? This doesn't seem very normal or logical, right? So in that, I mean, I started reading about it and I realized that how paneer came from these invasions from up north, and how Indians have very happily embraced it. But these kind of things one can think about only when they're exposed to so many cuisines, that which other culture has this paneer product. Where did these naan and these choles come from? Where did tomato come to India? Because we don't hear stories in which Ganpati Dada was having tomatoes,
Precisely.
right? So definitely it's not Indian, but now it's a part of every Indian cuisine. So it's just joy. I mean, the more I get exposed to different cuisines like Korean food, Japanese food, all kinds of foods, and they use sometimes Indian spices, and it's a joy. So I derive my happiness like that then.
Okay, so Devina, who addresses the healthcare issues using the design innovation, how sort of a conscious she is when it's come to a health, or what sort of health freak she is?
I would always want to be a health freak, but considering the amount of travel and Delhi being Delhi, I want to be, but I'm not able to. I end up eating all wrong food.
Okay, so we end this conversation over here. Inspiration for most of the people who are into innovation as to how you fuel your passion, how you create a kind of an enterprise within an enterprise, how do you try to trigger a problem, how do you read something and try to understand, how do you question a particular thing, like the way she talked about the paneer or the tomatoes. Does today the youth really question something what is happening around them in terms of their food or in terms of their content or whatever it is? I think that's where the innovators are born. Quest, I think, is the sublime to this concept of innovation and innovators. And So keep on asking the questions. Have your quest. Try to understand as to why this is, what this is. One read will lead you to another. That's what Devina has done. And that's how you may even become an innovator. Thanks a lot for watching this conversation with Devina Kothari on Dateline Gujarat. And we'll bring such entrepreneurs and such people from whom can take inspiration in this series. The DLG innovators, entrepreneurs, and the kind of people who talk about their inspiration, and they can inspire millions of lives. Thank you once again for watching Dateline Gujarat. Thanks a lot.